over the weekend, the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, hosted a congressional delegation from the U.S. Now, the head of that delegation, Senator Chris Coons, has expressed the need for legislators, traditional leaders, and civil society to make personal sacrifices to protect Ghana's democracy. He believes it is only when legislators, for instance, make decisions in the interest of the country which may go against their party that the nation can deal with issues like corruption. Chris Coons, like I said, was speaking at a visit of a U.S. congressional delegation to the Institute of Economic Affairs.
It required courage by legislators. It required attention by media to hold it to account. And it required a federal prosecutor who was independent. Only with those three was he called to account. He easily could have avoided accountability. And our institutions, I think our institutions in the United States are fairly deep and fairly strong. At the state level, at the federal level, the independence of our executive, judiciary, and legislature. But they are being tested right now, greatly. And they will be tested in the years ahead. And it requires some folks stepping forward. Right now, there is a special prosecutor named Robert Mueller, who is the former FBI director, who is investigating the President of the United States for obstruction of justice. That is a powerful sentence. And there was grave concern that our president might fire him because of things he was saying. So a Republican senator from the president's party came to me right before we left for the month of August and said, I want to introduce a bill to defend the special prosecutor, to make it much harder for him to be fired, and to give him a judicial avenue for redress in the event of an inappropriate firing. I looked at him and I said, really? That's impressive. Thank you. Would you like to have our lawyers talk about this over the recess? He said, no. We need to introduce this bill now. We sat down and hammered it out and introduced it the next day. It's easy for me to do. It's brave for him to do. And he has attracted public attacks from the president for doing so. All I'm going to say, by way of example, is that in order for democracy to be stronger, occasionally it requires judges, police officers, senators, congressmen, business people, think tank leaders, faith leaders, traditional leaders, to step forward and say, we are stewards of institutions that will live beyond us, only if we sacrifice.
Now, Majority Leader Osei Chairman Sabonsu agreed with the senator that Parliament needs to act more independently. He revealed that new legislation is being introduced within the House to better enable them carry out their watchdog role.
We need to strengthen our institutions of governance. I think it's the only route to surviving as a nation. And if you're able to do that, then we'll be able to see the dividends of democratic governance. Because I get worried sometimes when people get agitated. They want to see the dividends. And whatever we say about development projects, ultimately should find expression in the living standards of our people. They are not saying much. Food security, providing employment, and generating prosperity for our people. That is what we require to do. And we're not doing much in these areas. So let's be much more up and doing. And I think that certainly will be the way for us. All governments are the same. We should not delude ourselves. If we leave them, human as they are, people will begin to cut corners, which is why it's important to strengthen the institutions, the anti-corruption institutions, especially Parliament. We can talk about SHRAC, we can talk about UOCO, we can talk about the Auditor General, we can talk about the Attorney General, Statistical Service, and so on. But I think ultimately, because Parliament has financial control over the executive in what we exercise during the consideration of the budget, and we should be much more proactive in when budgets start rolling out, using the instruments of various committees in Parliament to oversee what is happening within the ambit of the executive, and not leave them to do their own things, and also not leave the entire enterprise on the shoulders of just one committee, the Public Accounts Committee. All committees in Parliament are required to oversee the executives in the various sectors. Unfortunately, we do not appear to be doing much in those areas. What Public Accounts does, really, is a posthumous exercise. But we should not live to often apply our efforts on posthumous adventures. When concurrent to the rolling out of budgets, committees should be triggered to perform their oversight responsibilities. And by that, we'll be able to hold government in check, and government will do what is right.
But they say partisanship plays a big role in Parliament, and that is what is stopping.
At the committee level, it shouldn't be. At the committee level, we operate consensually, which is why elsewhere, and I've related to how committees in Parliament are structured in our part of the world. Elsewhere, there's a different structure. For instance, we all do acknowledge that even though Parliament exists to hold governments in check, human as we are, a ruling party's members in Parliament would usually not feel very comfortable confronting their own administrations. The onus or the burden of oversight usually rests much on the shoulders of the opposition parties than the ruling parties, which is why in other jurisdictions, in the established jurisdictions, a winning party does not hold the leadership of all parties, of all the committees in Parliament. So we think that maybe we should have a second look at that and see how to improve on the governance architecture in Parliament itself.